Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is Friday morning, February 19th, 5:30 in the morning here, Calgary, Alberta time, and I'm just happy to be here. I'm having some coffee, just waking up, and I hope everyone is doing well, and I appreciate you being here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, and 15 minutes we'll be on here today. This is a live streaming internet radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And you can always go on there and sit in the chat room. I don't have anything typed up in the chat room just because I find at the times that I do my show, most people aren't up, and so there's not usually too many people sitting in the chat room. So I'll just go ahead and give you the information, like the resources on as I go through the show. So yeah, this is great. I just want to do some housekeeping real quick. This is not a professional show, and I don't have any certificates in like counseling or a therapist. Like I'm not a counselor or a therapist. I'm just a person who sits on Blog Talk Radio because I care about people very much, and I know that there's so many people out there who are dealing with adult survivor issues of child abuse and neglect. And I just think that I just wanted to be one more voice, just to say you're not alone. It's a sad fact, but there's so many of us out there, and there's lots and lots of help. And I think that I never really started looking around at the help that was available out there to me until just recently. And I actually really felt very much alone for so many years. And I used to find a few friends who I could talk to here and there, and then generally those relationships just broke off, and people just if they couldn't relate really to what I was going through, why I was feeling the way that I was, and so I think they kind of felt that I was just too much to be in a relationship with, a friendship, and most of them ended up just kind of blowing me off. And some I actually told to get lost because I just found that they couldn't even open their heart towards me at all. So, I decided I don't want to hang around with people who are just going to cause me more pain and grief, right? So, it was a lonely existence for so many years, and that's why I thought, I'm in between courses at MRU, and I'll just do this show. And so I'm not a professional of any kind, and this is not meant to replace professional help. And actually, I'm here to say, that people who are survivors of child abuse, of any kind of child abuse, it doesn't matter what kind, child abuse is very traumatic, and it's very hard on a person. And if you make it to be my age, I'm just so happy and thankful. And if you're just searching and in your healing, keep reaching out. And maybe a counselor or a therapist is not a bad idea. And even for me, I think about it, and I think, someday when I actually have time, I might actually contact a counselor or a therapist and just work through some of my stuff. And because I'm doing really quite well nowadays, but there was a time that I wasn't. And I'd still like to have some professional counseling. So, I do promote it. And if you're under the age of 18, I really suggest that you listen to this with someone who you trust, like a mentor or a parent who really cares about what you're listening to, or a relative who you trust and who has a good head on their shoulders, because they can help you with questions that you might have, and they can kind of maybe help you find some information that, if you're listening to this and you're a young person, I cover all abuse topics surrounding abuse of all kinds, and they can be quite scary. And so that's why, and a lot of people just haven't heard anything about abuse too much because nobody really wants to talk about it. And so if you are listening to this show, it's really a good idea, good idea to get someone to listen to it with you, and that way they can help you with just kind of processing some of this information, because abuse is very scary, and it's hard to listen to. And I don't mind talking about it, but that's because I've healed enough to where I can talk about it. And that's if you're suffering with post-traumatic stress disorder or any kind of adult survivor issues, psychological issues, and you think the show could trigger you, please don't listen and just turn it off, because I don't want anybody to feel bad from listening to the show. So make sure that you actually know that you can listen to this show. And, that's why I say listen at your own discretion, please. And so we're going to cover today, yesterday morning, we were talking about effects of child abuse. This was from It was called Child Abuse, an Overview, Effects of Child Abuse on Children, Abuse in General. And that's a great article I found on Find Counseling, www.findcounseling. And it kind of led at the end, talking about just abuse seems to increase the risk for all symptoms. Basically, children are supposed to learn everything they need to thrive in this world from their caretakers. Abusive parents provide the opposite of what children need. Instead of teaching and nurturing growth, they distort and destroy. That was the last part of the article that we left off with, and I thought, yeah, that's what causes a lot of young people to go and do the things that they do. And so I thought, okay, I really want to take a look at some of these issues. And I found an article this morning on understanding child maltreatment and juvenile delinquency. It's called The Research. It's by Kathy Spatz-Widom, PhD. And I'll get you the, because I printed this off and I didn't keep the link, but I know where to get it. But you can type right into your browser, Understanding Child Maltreatment and Juvenile Delinquency, and then it'll bring up the article, and it's by Kathy Spatz-Widom. And I just want to look at this because it's so important. They see so many kids on the street, and people always, I've heard so many negative comments before from people like, look at those little punks, why don't they just go home? What's the matter with those kids? And I think, people, if you had any idea what their home lives were like, you probably wouldn't want to go home either. And that doesn't account for all of the youth that are on the street, but it does account for a lot of them. And so I think it's just unfortunate that people can't take a look at a situation and try to maybe put themselves in someone else's shoes before making really ignorant comments, because a lot of these kids are on the run, and a lot of them don't have anywhere to go. A lot of them are thrown out of their homes. When I was growing up, I knew lots and lots of kids who were thrown out of their homes. Our parents didn't throw us out, but they made life so miserable for us that that's the one thing they didn't do. They didn't throw us out. But what they did do was cause so much trauma and psychological damage that it would have probably been better had they thrown us out, because we could have been, moved on somewhere else. But the thing is a lot of kids are so abused and then thrown out on the street, and runaways and stuff. They don't have the coping skills or techniques to learn that the streets are a dangerous place. They've already been at home. Home is a dangerous place for them. A home was a dangerous place for me. And a lot of these kids feel safer on the street, and I know I used to feel safer running around with my friends in all hours of the night than I did in my own home. So that just tells you right there. It's really hard on kids. And so I wanted to take a look at this article, Understanding Child Maltreatment and Juvenile Delinquency, and we'll just read through it, and maybe we'll just, we won't be able to finish it today, but we'll take a look at it today, and then we'll finish it on Monday. So I'll just read right from the page. This is Kathy Spatz-Widom writing here, PhD. Over the past 20 years, child maltreatment researchers and practitioners, as well as those in the field of criminal justice, have been increasingly concerned about the long-term negative consequences of child abuse and neglect, and the increased likelihood of abused and neglected youth to be involved in the juvenile justice system. Although no single factor by itself is likely to account for the development of criminal behavior, the importance of childhood victimization as a risk factor for subsequent delinquency and violence has become increasingly recognized. So there is a link there, Research on the relationship between child maltreatment and juvenile delinquency. Several early reviews of studies examining the relationship between child maltreatment and delinquency concluded that knowledge about this relationship was limited because of methodological problems inherent in prior studies, including reliance on retrospective designs and lack of control or comparison groups of non-abused and non-neglected children. In addition, early findings on the relationship between child maltreatment and violent criminal behavior were sometimes contradictory. More recent research has begun to overcome many of the methodological problems of earlier research and shows the importance of childhood victimization as a risk factor for subsequent delinquency and violence. So they're saying, the way that the studies were the methods they were using to do these studies, and just the groups, the control groups that they had and stuff, they just weren't. The early findings just weren't. Were kind of contradictory. So now they said a lot of research has been going into this, and I think it's good. They need to do it because there is a huge, I knew lots of kids who were abused when I was growing up. It's sad to say, and we were all kind of living in the same neighborhood, and we hung out together because that's why we hung out together, because we were the same type of kids, right? And almost all of us were involved in some sort of juvenile delinquency situation. So, and sometimes my home was better than theirs, and I thought, man, at least I'm not treated this way or that way, right? it's just horrible what people do to their kids. Childhood maltreatment and juvenile crime. 4 prospective investigations in different parts of the United States documented a relationship between childhood victimization and some form of delinquent behavior. In the first study, the researcher followed children who had been abused and or neglected approximately 25 years earlier through an examination of official criminal records, and then compared them with a matched control group of children of the same age, sex, race, and approximate social class. The author conducted this research in a metropolitan county in the Midwest using cases of child abuse and neglect that came to the attention of the courts from 1967 through 1971. So that's the material they used. An assessment of criminal behavior when these individuals were approximately 33 years old found that early child abuse and neglect increased the risk of arrest as a juvenile by 55% and increased the risk of being arrested for a violent crime as a juvenile by 96%. So that's pretty heavy duty. The Midwest study also found that child abuse and neglect were associated with earlier onset of juvenile crime. Abused and neglected children were first arrested about a year earlier than their matched non-abused and non-neglected peers, and were more likely to become recidivists and chronic offenders. As part of the Rochester Youth Development Study, Smith and Thornberry collected information on child abuse and neglect for their cohort of youth in upstate New York from the Department of Social Services in Rochester. And so they'd have a table, and they have all kinds of tables on this article. It's a great article, and I'll find that resource, that website, and I'll give it to you on Monday. But you can type right into your browser like Understanding Child Maltreatment and Juvenile Delinquency, and you'll see it's written by Kathy Spatz-Widom, PhD. So it's really a great article. They have whole tables and all kinds of charts and studies, and they go on table 1, table 2. Then they have the cycle of violence. She wrote here. It continues on into other consequences and implications. So we have about 2 minutes left. So I'm going to stop there, and we'll finish on Monday. But I know, in my own situation, my own family, my siblings and stuff. Some of the siblings didn't get in trouble at all, and then others did. And it just, the way that they were treated was just horrible. And, myself, I didn't want to get in trouble at school or anything like that. And so I laid very low, but it doesn't mean that I wasn't up to anything. I was just very good at not getting caught. And, because I didn't want to get in trouble because I didn't want to deal with the aftermath of my mom, right? Because I knew that my mom would kill me because she used to abuse me for no reason. I mean, I could just walk in the room and have a certain look on my face, and that was her good excuse. And that way, she could beat me up for any reason then, because it wouldn't matter what look I had on my face. That was her excuse, So it didn't matter what look I had on my face. I could be, beaten up and tossed around and kicked around for that. And so I certainly didn't want to get in trouble with the law. And so, I tried to stay on the right side of the law. And so, but I had a lot of friends who just, I'm telling you, they had a lot of problems and ended up in and out and jail, a juvenile hall, and were eventually in prison. And a lot of them came from abusive homes and terrible situations. And so, there is a huge link in my mind because I knew lots of people who were not abused, and they all seemed to be doing great because they were preparing to go to college, and they were getting ready to do something with their lives, and we were all hanging around doing, massive amounts of drugs and stuff. So there is a definite link. I think it's a huge important thing to look at. So everyone, I hope you have a great day. We have about a minute left. I am I'm a child advocate, but I am the Canadian regional director for Dream Catchers for abused children, and I am so happy to take on this volunteer role, and I'm so extremely happy to see the work that they are doing. So they are so proactive on awareness, education, prevention of child abuse. And you can check out their website. Just type into your browser www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com, and their website is great. They have so much information there, and you can spend a lifetime there. And Tuesday night we have another Dream Catchers Talk radio show with Donna Shear hosting, me the co-host, which is so wonderful. And we're going to be talking about the effects of emotion child abuse, right? And so I hope you can tune in and join us. And I really hope that you will reach out and get some help. That's my biggest hope for you today. That if you're suffering, there's so many groups you can get involved with. Child abuse survivors, a safe place for survivors and supporters, and different things. Get a hold of me if you need some of that information. I have lots and lots of resources. And have a great day, everybody. My heart is with you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.